All right, welcome everyone. Hey, I'm really excited to be back with a very special episode. We have Reddit OC Poetry's own Bootstrap17 with us today,
17.
aka Devon Brock. And Devon, if you allow me to give you just a brief introduction here, comes heralded. Very excited to have Devon here. Devon's a cook and a writer living in South Dakota with his wife and dog, seen off screen. His poems appear or are forthcoming in Piccioletta Barca, Crosswinds Poetry Journal, Spank the Carp,
Love
uh,
Spank the Carp.
the Atlanta Review, which just dinged me on a neg, I'll have you know, among others. And of course, you can find his poetry as Bootstrap17 on
17.
Reddit. Is it
Bootstrap 7. It's
it's
17.
17? Oh. Oh. Okay, well we go for batting kind of, 300 batting average here. It's kind of what we can do in our wheelhouse. So all right. Very great to have you on, Devon.
Oh, I'm honored, man. I'm totally honored.
Well, it's a huge platform for you here. So, make the most of this. We're going to be reaching potentially dozens of people simultaneously.
I'll take it.
Right on. So you're a strong poet, my friend. And
Thanks.
how did you get involved on Reddit? And what are you doing slumming on Reddit?
Oh, I'm not slumming. I love OCP. I mean, it's a great space, It's a great space for everybody to grow. Uh, I went I've been writing for a long time.
Shows
Um,
that shows.
I went to college in the early 90s for poetry, expository writing, fiction writing, etc. Ran out of money. Uh, didn't get a degree. Uh, and One day I decided, oh, I have nothing to say. So I stopped for about 25 years. And then one day, April 2018, I was standing outside in a snowbank and something hit me and didn't know what to do with it. So I was new to Reddit. So I'm like, I'll put it here.
So
And
it's
so,
so it's been about 3 years of posting to Reddit.
yeah.
And did you start submitting more or less concurrently at the same time?
I started submitting about a year and a half ago. About a
Okay,
year and
well,
a year and a half because I'm still waiting on some submissions from that time.
oh, I hear you. So that's very impressive. So I would have thought you'd been hammering away at it a little longer than that in terms of the submissions. So very well done. I mean, I could see why this stuff is
Thanks.
being picked up. So I do want to talk about your poetry, and thank you for being generous and really opening yourself and your portfolio up to me, and allowing me to kind of get my MIDI, my grubby mitts on your materials. And while we're not going to be able to cover and showcase everything that you can do, I did kind of want to take some time to highlight and celebrate what I think are some special features of your writing. I also want to use this opportunity kind of to show people on OC kind of what's possible, some directions for themselves, and then you and I can discuss some kind of special problems that people might encounter.
Sure.
So I will share my screen. I just have a couple of things pulled up here. Let's see. Do. Okay, so that's that Italian. I don't know if you can see what I see now, Devin.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, so
Yep.
I stumbled all over this La Piccioletta Barca.
Oh,
So
Piccioletta.
Piccioletta,
La
hey. So
Piccioletta Barca.
I have been to Italy, but I leave the Italian to my wife.
The Piccioletta Barca is out of Cambridge, Cambridge University. Cambridge University in the UK.
Well, that's a great connection. She did her my wife did her master's there, so
Oh, nice,
that
nice.
what we have visited. Um, okay, so when I'm looking at this poem, I'm just gonna give it a. You want to do? Would you do the honors, please, Devon? That makes more sense.
Can I scroll it? Is the
You might
full?
not be able to scroll it, but I'll keep up with you.
Okay. This is Silent the Sun Falls. Silent, excuse me, silent where they fell, spent ash, dog hair, coffee grounds. Silence as they were when new to use, for buzz, for warmth, for wake now. Bits of grit to grind down slippers and vanquished for a pleasure. Silence where they fell, old debts dismembered, chunks of glass that could perhaps be reassembled as candy dishes or ashtrays, maybe porches, where chew jaws took summer and low orange breeze. The sun fell where it falls, like threadbare throws, beaters for rugs, old dogs chained to trees, and the red rust Fords thumped down by the woodpile, scavenged for parts, silent, like the giddy knowledge of children racing in torn sprung seats.
I found this poem very moving, Devon.
Oh, thank you.
There's certainly some places where I could pick, and kind of, I guess my occupation is kind of a little bit of a poetry magpie. But that's first. I want to start kind of big picture. I mean, across a lot of the poetry of yours that I've read, you're very interested in kind of offering this lament for commonplace things, and you have these old Fords, the thrift store mugs. We talked about that poem of yours on a previous episode. I love that poem of yours with the cutting, that the chicken parts. We'll probably be able to talk about that later. But in general, you're showing how people's lives kind of get bent and lost to these different things, these inanimate objects. And you also seem to be drawn to people who might otherwise be forgotten or forgettable. And you want to make them memorable. You want to kind of provide this service and catch them in the amber of the lyric. So looking at this poem, when you sat down to write that, what were you thinking about? Kind of trying to capture this kind of like freeze time in that way? Was that like, I don't know, I don't want to dismantle your intentions exactly, but was that kind of on your radar a little bit?
With this, when I put this together, had recently been introduced to something called thing theory. Are you familiar with thing theory?
Are you going to the kind of William Carlos Williams?
Well, that which I fully subscribe to, no ideas but in things. Thing theory in terms of the relationship between objects and humans, and when something is broken, that relationship breaks and the thing becomes the object, basically.
I was not privy to that specific theory, although I certainly had red wheelbarrows flashing before my eyes while reading this poem.
Love that poem.
Um,
It's a manifesto, honestly.
I think there's this kind of conundrum in this poem with these things. This old dog chained to trees. It's like kind of this lyric chicken and egg that I thought of. Are you kind of merely observing and capturing as a writer, or are you kind of creating in the poem by putting the dogs chained in there? Are you chaining them down kind of forever? Are you capturing them forever? Almost like you know what I'm saying? Like kind of like a lepidopterist, like pinning them for us for an aesthetic purpose. And what I don't, again, it seems unfair to ask you like what motivates you, but the strikingness of those dogs, it felt painful to have to witness that as the reader, but moving.
It's, I always want to look at small things and try and derive large things from them without stating it explicitly, I suppose. And I just like to focus on very small. Uh, I think you know what I'm saying.
I do. I think there's a large gesture with these dogs, though, that isn't small and is part of this kind of hidden heroic element to this poem that I think would be easy to overlook. I think of something like, um, obviously it's a Dante image of those chained dogs. It's a kind of a, gates of hell type of image. But then I think of that chain and how you follow it with the giddy knowledge of children. And I have to then think of Prometheus. I have to think of how, you know, there's this cost to insight, there's this cost to inspiration. And I also thought perhaps a little bit about the poet and the poet's relationship to their childhood. I mean, the kids are literally going nowhere.
Right.
They're literally driving to nowhere. It's pure imagination, but it's this pointless, painful imagination. It's not the imagination of like Elon Musk, like we're going to accomplish something amazing. Like, finishing this poem, that's why it's so effective. That's why it's a kick in the dick, is because they're not going to go anywhere.
True. That final image is derived from a story my wife would tell me. We'd drive past where her grandparents lived, and there was this old these Fords just lined up in this grove of trees, and she was there. They were not allowed to play there, but they would always sneak off and race, and they grab the wheel, and the springs were coming up and stick them in the butts, and they'd get punished for it, definitely. But the old dogs, I wanted to, it relates in creating this, it relates to the chew jaws, the old men, which are chew jaws, as I refer to them here. I wanted a sonic connection between chew jaw and dogs to kind of tie those two bits together, and then break it again with the children racing to nowhere.
Oh, show people what you're talking about with
the second stanza, second to last line.
Yeah. So I did not read chew jaws as just elderly people myself. I could see that now. I thought I saw it's just this kind of litany. Either I perhaps I could see dentures there.
I was thinking more of like old men with a big wad of tobacco in their cheek. I was also reading a lot of Thomas Lux at the time.
Okay.
And when you really dive into somebody, you sort of take on a little bit of that persona. Yeah.
Right on. So I don't think we need to kind of completely lift the skirt. I think some of the pleasure of a poem like this is also that the mystery, and the excitement for the reader of kind of trying to a little bit of enigma, of puzzle, of trying to piece these different things together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you see that, and I thought this second stanza of them, the third stanza obviously is I imagine why they took this poem is quite exquisite. The second stanza, I thought that you have this you have a kind of a series of diminishments, the perhaps, and then the passive be. Then you slow the reader with this hyphen assembled. And then you have a maybe, so you're kind of doubling up on these qualifiers and the kind of deacceleration. So I felt this stanza to me was the one where I, as a reader, was most likely to kind of face some distraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you really, I also, I try not to kind of pick at published poems only because I feel like, um, you know, editors tend to know what they're doing. You don't,
Yeah,
what am I going
yeah.
to do? Like write the editor at Cambridge a letter and be like, I have some issues. It's not really going to work. Um,
Yeah.
but, but yeah, I know when you communicated to me, like every poet, you're like, hey, but I'm working on this new stuff. I'm really excited about the new stuff. And, as poets, we also have to kind of, take some time and remember that, our old stuff, might have some very significant merits. I think the associative possibilities, and this kind of nod to the romantic tradition of childhood, the giddy knowledge of children is probably a pretty quotable line there.
You know, regarding that being excited about the new stuff, the old stuff informs the new stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'm working in a very minimalist style right now, but like I would edit the crap out of this piece if it was presented to me now. But it's a continuum. You just keep moving. You keep moving. You read more. You write more. You experience more. So yeah.
So just this was the poem I kind of pulled out of the Reddit heap, um, and you had DM'd it. We did chat back and forth about
Hmm.
this. When you sent this to me, but obviously I feel personally, patting myself on the back, very vindicated, that it's impossible for quality to hide forever from me. Um, and OC Poetry is a pretty messy place, Devon.
There's some great stuff there too.
I mean, case in point,
I
there
read
is,
something on
yeah, go ahead.
who did I read today? God, I'm trying to remember the name of the poem. The title lured me in. Oh, I don't. There's something great out there. It's in new. Um, I can't remember the
I'll go
poet's
have a peek.
name.
I'll go have a peek. Yeah. There's a lot allowed. Um, but sometimes, every once in a while. Yeah. So I've talked about this poem, and as I've had an opportunity to reread it and look at it again, certainly I commented before how the shape of the poem, your use of these, um, tercets really amplifies this, your focus on the shape, on the mug itself, on its ability to receive and be filled. But it also connects with those themes that I think is kind of, what I would say would be your strength. Is this, interest in this woman or person who had the cup before, and is the poem imply, to me, my reading of it is passed on, is then memorialized and prevented from being entirely forgotten. So again, you're looking at ordinary people's lives, ones, for whom there is going to be no national newspaper obit. There's not going to be any elegy. No one's going to be, crying besides perhaps immediate family. And the poem even implies maybe not even them are gonna, there might not be anybody.
The cup is in the thrift store.
Right.
Yeah.
So your ability to gesture at that, a kind of anonymity of the way most people pass, suggests to me this project that you have, that you're animated by this idea, this lyric service, really, of trying to dignify, um, lives that would otherwise go past unsung. You want to sing for them.
That's pretty much everybody, isn't it?
It is pretty much everybody, but not. I mean, here's what's weird, right? I mean, you go reading poetry books, you go reading history books, you go reading whatever, you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't
Yeah.
feel it. It's only the lyric that could deliver you that message in that way and that poignancy, because it needs to be specific, which this
Yes.
poem is specific. That's why I tell people all the time, if you just say all the thousands, you just say, you make a list of last names or something like a fucking phone book, you're not going to do it. It's not going to work.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if even in any given movie, if you go across a field of dead bodies after a battle, any good cinematographer is going to focus on one face and zoom right down on it.
You don't give up. You refuse to give us the face, to bow to sentiment and to show us the face. You refuse to do that. This poem is too unsentimental, unflinching. It wants to give us our own body and our awareness that we're gonna die. And when we feel that, chill, then we feel the loss, we feel the sorrow. Only that first, only through our own self-preservation, that our time is limited.
Yeah.
That's why you open with that, and we talked about this opening when we went back and forth, and I've thought about it a lot, but that's why you open the way you open. Sometimes the weight is too much for me, for you, for the person receiving this poem, for people who are alive, for the living.
Yeah, that opening was precisely that, the holding the cup. You could feel that other person's life and experiences, their grief. And this went through a lot of revisions, maybe 8, 9, 10 revisions.
I think it's a huge pitfall that folks, handicap themselves, especially early on in their writing, in their kind of poetry journey, where they feel like, if I write a new draft, I might lose something precious about this draft. And I
Right.
think
So,
as you grow in experience, you realize it's not. There's a many directional. You can move in many different directions from the existing text. It doesn't limit.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, this poem had started with a woman sitting in a kitchen window in its initial drafts, and more painted a scene of this person I don't know, and it needed to be more personal. The cup needed to be in my hands, not hers. It's,
Yeah.
And so sometimes the weight of it is too much, is basically summarizing every draft that came before. So we don't need to be so verbose all the time.
Yeah, be bold. I mean, that's a great lesson. That I feel like sometimes a lot of people putting stuff out on OCPoetry, and you're right, not everyone, are doing this to kind of test the water a little bit, like see trial and error, see what sticks, type of stuff. Like, throw enough poems against the wall, maybe you'll find something that's good. And we all do that. Like, I submit stuff to literary journals all the time, and I look like, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
poem isn't ready.
Yeah, that's when I get a rejection, and it's just like, well, no wonder.
Yeah, no wonder. I agree with you. I would reject that too, and that happens sometimes. That takes a while for that to settle in and feel that way. But I feel like it's worth it to be tenacious, and you can read the tenacity, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that as well. But you can read the tenacity in the confidence you're writing. So this poem, I think you just
that's from
posted this.
yesterday.
Yeah, nothing gets past me, Devon. And nothing doesn't work that way.
This is about a 8th or 9th draft of this one too.
So this is just continuing your theme, continuing the Devon project here. So the project goes on, this is another guy, presumably gal, dying unsung.
Yep.
And this time you introduce this classic image of the birds, the swallows in this case, but think
Yep.
Yeats in his Colin Comforted had crows. I'm not sure. Maybe he had all types of different birds, but classic image of the of birds as the transition to the afterlife. In this
Yes.
case, there's this kind of double image of maybe they're just eating this. They're picking them apart.
I was wondering if that sense would be there. I was hoping not.
You hoping not?
That they were picking them apart. I was hoping that didn't come across that way. I
Well, I
was
think
thinking,
it's inevitable one would receive it that way. I don't think that weakens the poem at
sure.
all.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, once you let a poem out, it's up to the reader to decide what is and what is not. Yeah, the poet's intents often don't
I
really
mean, you're
matter.
right that swallows aren't, kind of carrion
Yeah, they're
birds.
not generally.
No.
I was thinking, I was trying to picture them as carrying a soul off in the absence of angels, I guess.
So seaworthiness view here, he jumps in, says a little short, but super cool imagery. So, usually I want to go a few rounds with the comments. This isn't that bad. I mean, it's a little abortive and silly, but it's not that bad. I mean, I would say if you're gonna kind of give the last rites here, Devon, you're gonna stand up for this guy and deliver. I wouldn't mind you. You could keep going. I mean, if unless you're looking for an epigram to be chiseled on the headstone, that type of thing, but you're not. That doesn't quite seem to be what you're saying either. I don't get that kind of epitaph vibe here. I get more of another more along the lament lines. So I think this could I mean, could potentially could grow.
It could.
It
It could.
could
Yes.
could. I know you've written a lot. You sent me a bundle of stuff, and I apologize if we're not able to wade through and kind of
No
pick
worries.
as the swallows. I can't pick all of your flesh, your corpus.
The corpus.
Yeah. All right. Um, I'm going to see if I can do some Zoom magic and stop the share. Go back to the one-on-one here. Now I just turn the screws on you, Devon. Just ask all the tough questions, like
All right, let's go.
history, like weird dates. No, I want to loosen up a little bit, and I'm just fascinated by this. So I too, I had this period. I had, I call my like lost years or whatever, because just like our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, I had those lost years unaccounted for. They're not in the official story. But no, I think a lot of poets have that, where it's like either there's some, you just kind of, I don't know. For me, it was I needed all that energy to do other stuff in my life, like figure out how to be a grown up, figure out how
Oh
to be
yeah.
like. I just had other stuff I needed to do. So I have this hypothesis, maybe like, you're gonna come back stronger. But Alexander Pope has this great image in his essay on criticism, and he describes this kind of mountain climber experience for the critic. Now, it could be for the poet as well, where it's like fall summit after fall summit, and like you think you're there, you think you know it all, you think you have the tools to prosecute your project, and you realize, oh my gosh, like there's so much more for me to do. Have you had that type of experience, or would you describe would you use other imagery to describe kind of your poetry journey?
I would say I'd take a more pugilistic approach, I suppose. Yeah, when I was studying in college, and I was very, very prolific, and my professors dubbed it machine gun poetry. It was just images splattered on the wall. And and my, what do they call it? Exit review? Or no, what do you call it at the end of the semester? At the end of the semester, where they kind of go through your stuff and offer guidance. And I had a professor who runs his own journal still say, I like it, but I don't know of anybody that will publish it. I won't. So that was like, it was like a kidney punch. And, you know, I was like, well, screw you. I'm going to go off and do it. So then,
That's young man style, man. I mean,
yeah.
I got out of my MFA. I was rip roaring ready to prove everybody wrong. And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
not,
I'll be submitting to his journal now, 28 years later. But as soon as he gets away from self-addressed stamped envelopes. But and
I
then,
send out some of those every once in a while. There's nothing wrong
oh
with
my
it.
God.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? And then
I've had
I
good,
can't,
just Devin, just devil's advocate on that one. I've had some good luck here and there. I feel like editors appreciate when you put in that personal kind of personal level of affection into your writing, and you fold it up and give them a kiss, lick it
lick
nice and
it.
good. Yep.
Lick it. Too bad you can't lick the stamp anymore.
Yeah.
Put that
No,
on there.
but I do think statistically, where I were to perform a regression on my submissions for you, you'd find it would be above the baseline. So just a
Yeah.
data
And then,
point for you. You know,
yeah.
it's hard, dude. Old contacts people. It's 100 times harder to submit to someone you respect than it is a total stranger. I'll take a billion rejections from some hoity-toity asshole I've never met at the New
Oh
Yorker
yeah.
or whatever or Paris Review. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Reject me again. I could take it, but if it's like, even if it's a small journal, and like you get that feeling of like, I'm a little disappointed, like that hurts.
Yeah. That is
That
very,
stings.
that
You
is
know?
very true. And you always have a soft place for that first acceptance. That's like home. La Piccoletta Barca, that the poem we read.
Okay.
That was my first acceptance, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, it felt so
Yeah, that's
good.
hard to go back and submit again. It's because like, well, what if they don't? What if they don't take the next round? It's tough. It's
Yeah.
not easy. Not easy.
Yeah.
So
I
the pugilist, Devon the pugilist.
the
So
pugilist.
that if uh who had that exact image of himself as prize fighter? That was gosh Rethke. Rethke styled
Okay.
himself in that exact fashion. So
Really?
that's literally, he loved boxing, huge boxing fan, and styled himself very much in that idea of a kind of a prize fighter or gangster or type of that was his super, I guess, kind of super ego or imagination kind of how he could engage in the world as we live it, because clearly he was hurting inside quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that was his kind of solution to living in this dirty world that we all have to exist in, was to fight.
Yeah.
So how's that working out for you?
Not too bad.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I chose the name Bootstraps, because I've been kicked in the teeth so many times in this life. It's just like, screw you. You're not gonna get me.
So I actually, I gotta say, I find myself thinking the same thing. I say, fuck them. I'm sending stuff out again.
Mm-hmm.
Damned if. Go ahead, reject it. Go ahead. Come on, bring it on, and I do that as well.
Yeah.
And then I have to counsel myself. Hey, well, you got to be fair to yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my counterpoint to you, Devon, is we can't control what these folks are going to do, but I do think, for my independent assessment, I think you've accomplished a tremendous amount.
Thanks. Well, I tell you, every rejection, and I can't state this too strongly, is an opportunity. There's a reason the poem is rejected. It could be an editor's emotional state at the time, or it could be obvious flaws that you don't see because you're too stinking close to the poem. So, with the wait times being as they are, sometimes dragging on into a year or more, sometimes 2 months, you have a distance and you get that poem back, you can tear through it and say, oh my God, I switched tense. They'll notice that. They noticed I switched tense. What if I change this from second person to first person? All my verbs are passive. Let's make this more active. You know, you have to look at it from an editorial point of view once it's left your hands.
Right.
Sorry, I got passionate for a second.
Devon, I completely and totally agree with you. And I feel like there's a risk as sort of to this kind of hyper analysis as well, where it's like sometimes I'm happy to have a poem that I've sent out 50 times, it's been rejected 50 times, and I don't want to budge at all. And I'm never going to change a damn word. Now that's highly
I have those.
unusual, but I think it is important to, yeah, you know what I'm saying then. All right. So I would say, I could see this development, which I think mirrors so many people and certainly mirrors mine, where, you could see that you're becoming drier and sparer. You're learning how to kind of, instead of state or directly express your emotions, you channel them productively, you invest them into these various craft artifacts that can do some of the lifting for you without you having to twist the arm of the reader. They find themselves moved indirectly by forces they can't necessarily comprehend it during that first read. And that tends to kind of privilege this kind of economy. And I guess I'm personally in this kind of like open conversation, like kind of like evil devil and like angel of like economy or a kind of luxuriance in my own writing. And it's a kind of constant tug of war.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know. So how would you frame this kind of pressure of economy and in your own writing and kind of how you dealt and framed that for yourself?
You have to give the reader something to hold on to. Any poet that says I don't give a crap what the reader thinks is lying. Otherwise,
or they're just bad.
Just bad.
I mean, there's that we see some poets who get quite a lot of engagement repeatedly on OCPoetry who are writing stuff that's just very, very, very bad, and that they clearly don't have any regard. It's just insulting the reader. But if you generate controversy on OCPoetry, then you have a party going on in your comments section. And
true. But yeah, it's a tug of war because you have to give the reader the tools to take that poem into themselves, which is the goal, to bring it into themselves, not to tell them your life. Who cares about my life? Nobody gives a crap about my life.
I say that all the time. I say that. Yeah. I say the same thing. No one cares. I mean, I'm, for better, for worse, I'm very happy about my life, but you are correct. I mean, I'm married, I'm white, male, heterosexual. These things, they all add up to a kind of a story that's been told quite successfully by a few generations of very successful poets already, and people aren't ready to or interested in more of that particular story.
Yeah. For me, modus operandi is do everything you can to hit with images to ping that subconscious just enough to generate a hoped for feeling or interpretation. Let the reader take it into their own body and into their own life. It's communion.
Do you feel sometimes I'm not trying to push anything on you. I'm trying to put words in your mouth. Sometimes I feel like this pressure of economy in contemporary verse is like this excavator, just like raping the land. And like, I really want to resist that and be like, well, why can't I write longer? Or why can't I write richer? But I find then when I write something that's dry, that's really muscular and dry, that's sinewy, that is so satisfying. And it's so
It
it's so
is.
it's a style that I can't get away from. As much
Mm-hmm.
as I have this love-hate relationship with it. And then I tell people to do it on the channel. I'm like, well, you need to develop economy, which of course they do. They need to at least to have that in their arsenal so they know what it is.
Yeah, yeah. Cut the fluff, cut to the chase. It doesn't have to be an epigraph length or epigram length. I have a poem out there which I'm working with. Is 27 pages long. Um, it needs some work, but it's definitely not economical.
Right.
It's it.
You might have specific objectives from line to line or stanza to stanza or page to page or section by section,
Voice
which
to
could be
voice.
yeah.
You know, take another bit of advice I always tell people is you got a million voices in your head, a million different voices. Each poem is a character. Doesn't have to be about you. Tell it in that voice. If that voice is a sonneteer, then write a freaking sonnet. If that voice is Tom Waits, get some gravel in your voice and do it that way. You know, don't be a one-trick pony. Develop, move, take risks, experiment.
Yeah, I think the economy thing, it kind of tempers and is this kind of ultimate balance against risk. So you need to take calculated risks and understand there's this cost associated with kind of just, kind of wild, endless wildness. Or if you really want to be wild, it has to be effectively wild. So that kind of boxer
Yeah,
with great footwork, great timing, great rhythm, and then at one point in the fight, it's just going to be ferocity.
mm-hmm.
Where if the time is right and that's the right moment, then the ferocity is calculated, timed, and relentless. But in general, unless you have that footwork, unless you have the rhythm, unless you have the timing, you know you're not gonna get very far as a boxer.
And none of it comes without practice, does it?
Yeah.
No. Endless practice. Write every day, people. OCP people, write every day, 15 minutes. You can give that much.
Or revise. I mean,
Or revise.
pull up those previous drafts, and I've developed this thing where I feel like work that's not doing me any good, that's like sitting on a printout or gathering dust or on my computer, I've started to resent it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
could I use this for something? Could it help me in any way? Could it help anybody? Could I be of some service with this piece by destroying it and remaking it?
Yeah.
Am I attached to this illusion of myself? And if so, that's just ego. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What Miles Davis said, the moment he thinks he knows everything about playing the trumpet, yeah, I can't remember the rest of the quote. Basically, I think he said he may as well quit playing that.
Right. So you gave some advice there of establishing this kind of habit, this ritual.
Yes.
I would also add to that, this kind of turning of the switch, like when you're composing new stuff, then you need to kind of suspend your critical instincts. But then when you go to revise, you need to be able to switch that on. I think that
Yeah.
people take a long time to understand that there's these kind of two very different modes as a poet or a writer, and they have to be developed independently. Like if you meet me when I'm in like composition mode, I'm this kind of wild-eyed child, like,
Yeah. Like this.
yeah. There's a reason why all this kooky stuff of astrology and new age, all this writers are always tempted by these things, and it's because you need a little magic to get going sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Dreams. Oh
Yeah,
my God! You wake
yeah.
if you remember a dream, you wake up in the morning, you
You
write
can
that
get
stuff
you
down.
can get into it pretty quick. Might
Yeah.
be a shortcut. Maybe that draft doesn't end up succeeding, but it could get you along that path of living a little bit, living your life in order to write, not writing
Mhm.
kind of in order to live your life. It's you
Right.
know,
Yes. Yeah. Your dreams are springboards to really surprising imagery.
yeah.
Whether it makes sense or not, just write that stuff down. You can pull it, observe everything. Everything is writable. Every single thing is writable. Every bug, blade of grass, whatever. It's
Which is very difficult to understand because I feel like I'm always telling people that's not going to work as a poem. Your poem isn't going to be able to function with the demands you're placing on it. It's not that they've selected something that's unpoetical or shouldn't go in a poem necessarily. Is that they're exerting this kind of over determining and trying to kind of twist the poem into doing something that they don't have the tools to do yet.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you try and force a poem into its box, but the best thing for me is to be surprised. But I didn't know I was thinking. I didn't know I had that thought.
right.
Being surprised by your own thoughts. But
It,
you
it
know,
could be it could be ultimately that the poem that you started writing and that you thought was important to write might not be that the poem has its own kind of terms and conditions and things it wants to do. And if you
yeah,
stand in the way of that, you stand in the way of the best possible poem. So
yeah, yeah, absolutely. For me, work writing process. Um, Start with an image and
okay.
let it go from there. You know, what am I looking at? I'm looking at a coffee cup or an ashtray or guitar.
I can see that in your writing now. That's really interesting. So yeah, that I would not describe my process as very often contingent on something like that. That's very interesting though. That's a
Yeah.
fantastic suggestion for people as well.
Hmm.
So it develops this almost kind of like monastic discipline of being able to um, reiterate over an image over and over until it starts to generate for you. So that takes a lot of practice, that's for sure. All right,
Yeah.
Devon. So, is there anything in terms of are you interested in getting in contact with Reddit folks? Can they reach out? Is that something you're interested in? Kind of.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
all right. So, is there any other way besides Bootstrap 17? Is there some other ways that people would like to connect with either other poets or people looking for advice or people just interested in reading what you're up to recently?
Anybody can DM me on Reddit, and I will respond. I love talking poetry.
Great.
Um, so that for Redditors, that's the best way. Um, that's a good starting point.
Great.
I, based on what the conversation is, I'd be willing to open up other avenues of communication.
Great. So, folks, that the word is, if you want to talk with Devon, you want to talk shop, you want to ask him about what he's working on, you maybe you just have some questions about how you could best productively use your composition time. Some of those exercises he uses in order to write his next poem. Feel free to reach out to him. It's Bootstrap17, and I'll put that in the video description. Anything else you want to tell the people, Devon?
Yeah, this guy right here, he's no slouch. You should put something up on OCP. I know
I
you're a
think about
moderate.
I actually I do I wrote this poem specifically for Reddit about smoking cigarettes when I was younger. How I used to smoke, and I thought it was just like the quintessential OC poem. I thought it was just perfect. So what I'm going to do, instead of posting it directly, I'm going to slide that over to Devon. If he likes it, then we're going to light it up and smoke it.
All right.
All right.
Yep.
Hey,
Yep.
Devon, what I want you to do is keep me in the loop on what you're doing on the OC, since I think this could be a recurring segment. And, down the road, we could pull up some other people's poems and talk about them.
That
I'm
would
sure
be fun.
people would be really into that.
That would
So,
be really fun. Yeah.
okay. Hey, kicking ass out there. Keep your hands up at all times. Throw that job, Devon. All right. Great to have
looking
you on.
forward. Looking forward to reading your piece, man. Thank you for having me
Absolutely.
on.